What's happening, everybody? Welcome back to the channel, and in today's video we are going to be doing part 2 of the idea I had called Does Virtual Gear Matter? Now previously, if you have not seen the first video, link in description by the way, we took a track and ran all of the instrument effects through ML Sound Lab, and now today we're going to take that same track and run it through plugins from Mixwave, Neural DSP, and Gecko Drums and see what kind of differences there are between essentially free plugins and some paid options. So let's roll the demo, and you tell me what you think. So there you have it. That is the track we're working with today. Let me know what you think in the comments. And now we'll jump into the Logic session and do a quick mix walkthrough like I did in the last video. And then I'll come back here for my final thoughts at the end. So we're at the desk here. Let's get into it. This is our Logic Pro session. Same thing as last time. Same setup for the most part too. We've got guitars, bass, drums. And then let's just go through this top to bottom, starting with guitars. So this is where things get a little different. In the last video, I had two instances of ML or amped roots, and those were on the left and right track going into a stereo instance of the Control Hub plugin. However, with this, which is the Mixwave Spirit Box plugin, which is phenomenal, by the way. It is my favorite guitar plugin now, and I've used this pretty much exclusively since I got it. If you're interested in seeing a longer video about this specifically, let me know. I didn't plan on making one though, because I figured everyone made one. So I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time going through the ins and outs of this, just kind of show you what I did and how we ended up here. So we've got our overdrive, pretty standard settings, the amp, which is on the rhythm channel, but the cab section is what really sells this for me. Again, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this because it's could be its own video. But with that being said, the interesting thing on this is one, the IRs are great, which personally I find the Neural DSP stuff is pretty good, but I would usually run those into the Cali cabs from GGD, which this video is not sponsored. I just love their stuff. But here you have either a V30 or a greenback option and then a whole ton of microphones. So on this specifically, as you can tell, we are using the V30 with a 57 here and then a greenback with this Tube 800 mic, which I don't know what that is, but it sounds great. So let's play that real quick. Killer IRs for sure. I think they sound great. And this greenback really helps round out the sound and really fill in that bottom end. And then we'll run through the rest of this real quick. It is a stereo instance, which is why it's the only thing on the guitar bus. Gate is on. The pitch shift is not on. And then this is neat because you have input and output processing, which is why I'm not using a Control Hub instance, because you can do it all right in here and it sounds just as good. Now, With the control hub, you're missing out on that color section that I will get into more in a minute, but I think it's a fair trade-off to have one less plugin running. So on the input processing, we're not doing anything here. We're doing a little boost here at 2.5, then another boost down here at 1.3, so 1300 kilohertz. And then this isn't doing anything, and then high pass, low pass, the compressor's off, and then on the output, the compressor's still off, and we're not using any of this. The high and low pass is on, but that's redundant. And then the other cool thing about this plugin is down here in the cab section, you have focus and contour. The focus, let's see, this is 7.3, so I'll just dial that in and out. But it really helps shave off all those harsh high ends in some of the other frequencies you don't necessarily want in a guitar. Then the contour, that's about 8, is more of just a mid-forward boost. And we'll play with these on and off real quick. Yeah, you can really hear the difference in what that is doing. And again, that's part of why I'm not using another control hub, because this plugin has so much built into it. It was truly fantastic, and I highly recommend it. But anyway, finally, finishing off with guitars, it's just the output. Brought that down so it fits in the mix better level-wise, and that's it. Again, similar with the other video, guitars aren't that hard. This plugin just has some more bells and whistles, but it's obviously much more expensive than free. So that is for you to decide. But moving on to bass. Now this, if you watched the first video, is an area I complained about in terms of amped bass. I was just not super thrilled with it. But you can see my video for all of that info. I'm not going to harp on it here. But in this mix version, we are using Neural DSP Parallax, which is fantastic. It is my favorite bass plugin. And then actually, let's push this here. Again, this is running into another instance of the control hub. And this is what that sounds like. See, this is why I love the Parallax, because you get the grits, but it's a good distortion, if that kind of makes sense. You can see the other video for what I mean by that. And you also have so much more clarity. And then, yeah, I just really like this plugin. And as you can see, settings here, not a ton of gain. And then bringing the mid down just a little bit, but then we're bringing the mids up here. Kind of the lower mids, about 400 hertz. And then another boost around 1K. And then really carving out some of that nastiness up here. We'll just do this on and off. Again, really just making it fit in the mix. And then you can see this is what I don't like. So that was this in solo, and then if we turn that off, personal preference, just something that I carve out a little bit. I think it gets a little distracting in the total mix, because you've already got enough of a mid boost here. I find that just to be a little, not my favorite. Anyway, the color section, like I said, we're not using it on the guitars because we're not using control hub, but it is fantastic. So without. We're actually not using a ton of it here. It's more prominent when we get to the drums, which we'll do next. But yeah, that's bass. I think this sounds much better. And then for the cab, It's just a 57. Oh, I should also mention the parallax, as you can see here, does have its own equalizer. I am just not using it here because we've got Control Hub going. But if we turn that off and engage the EQ, it's pretty good. It's pretty powerful. Obviously, you could bypass that and run into whatever EQ you would like, but it's nice to have it in the plugin. And that's just kind of one of my problems with amped bass was it was just too stripped down, very bare bones, which is fine, has its purpose, but I just really appreciate the level of detail you can get into with parallax. But anyway, that's bass. And of course, the big one is drums. And as you can see by our mix window, it is once again all Control Hub, along with the decapitator on our parallel compression bus. So this is drums with everything on. So you can tell that without all the processing, obviously the drums sound pretty raw, which is by design. We are, of course, using the GGD P5 kit, as I talked about at the start. And this is the default setting. And then I do have the turbo going on the snare just a little bit. And then we got Tom's cymbals. And this is all multi-outed, as you could tell. But yeah, it's pretty solid. And if we turn all this back on, we'll go through these one at a time. Let us start with kick. And then the color section, this is an example where it's going to come through a lot more. Check this out. Yeah, we're doing a big boost down here in the drive. We've got the tube saturation going, and the tape is 50%, which is the default. And then that's really hitting our compressor. You could tell the difference with and without it. And then our master EQ is pretty simple. So that is kick. Moving on to snare. Now the snare is the one part I had some trouble with when I was first getting used to this plugin, coming from the Architects kit, which is mixed ready out the box, but then I did my own thing on top of it. But this snare really just didn't sit right for me. I went through a whole bunch of tweaks here in Control Hub, as I mentioned in the last video, which if you haven't seen it, check it out. I think I've said that a couple times now, so I'll stop harping you. But it works off presets. So you've got all these different artists, and then you've got all your presets here. And I went through so many before I finally landed on this one. And then doing the turbo in the contact instance is what really got me that last 10%, maybe 5%. But yeah, you can really tell the difference that the Control Hub is making. Again, we are using the color section quite a bit here. Big treble boost, good size bass boost, and then all this is cranked pretty much as well. But yeah, that's snare. Kind of took me a minute, but I think it sounds great. And it's a little more unique than some of the stuff you're probably more used to hearing in metal songs. So it's really cool that they included Matt's signature snare in the plugin. And then moving on down the list to Tom's, which we'll have to come down to this section for. So you can tell doing quite a bit of tone shaping there. We'll run through this first with the color. I think that's doing not a ton from what it looks like, but it really adds to the sound. Then the dynamics, of course. And Master EQ, which is doing, I think, the bulk of the lifting here. So this preset is called Tom Punch, which is definitely what I was going for. I think I added this big boost up here, almost around 7.8K. 5 dB is kind of a lot, but at the same time, if that's what you need, that's what sounded good to me. And then we are boosting the treble down here in the color section as well. Really just kind of punches it through the mix a little more. Here again is without this. Really controlling that low end as well. Next, we have cymbals, which is an interesting one because not all of the cymbals in the kit have their own mics. So coming over here, we've got hat, splash, ride, crash, ride, stack. And then everything else flows into overhead. So we're not using all of these on this cymbal bus, and it's also not doing a ton. So that's what's in the cymbal section, and then here's our control hub. Not a ton, really just kind of bringing up that high end, making it shine a little more. As mentioned, a lot of the work on that front is being done in the overheads. And also, like I said, not all of these cymbals had their own mics. So you could tell when I was jumping around, they weren't all being played there. But here in the overheads, again, just kind of bringing up that high end. It's not doing a ton, but... just brightens everything up a little bit. And then we have our room, which again, it's not doing a ton, you know, it's a lot of little stuff that adds up. And of course our drum bus in the parallel compression, which I'll get into in a minute. But here's our room. Also, sorry for those little pops and things. I'm not quite sure why it does that. But that is rooms, not doing a ton here. And then lastly, we have the parallel compression, which is doing a lot. So yeah, you can tell right there, it's really crushing it, especially on the low end. So that's with, we'll do a section without. And that's, you know, it is doing a lot, like I said, especially in the low end, but the drive's only at 2. It gets crazier, but a little bit goes a long way. So that is the decapitator, which is fantastic. And all of this sums into our drum bus, which is the same preset I used before. This is George Lever, and this is my favorite drum bus preset that I found. Really glues everything together. So this is with. Yeah, that is definitely my favorite preset. The color is really doing it, the dynamics, the master EQ doesn't look like it's doing a ton, but it all comes together. And then we're just trimming the output here a little bit to make it fit in the mix, which you probably didn't hear much of a difference, but that's because I had to bring this down a little bit. Otherwise, it was a little overbearing in the mix. But anyway, that is what everything sounds like together in the bus. And then here's drums with and without all the processing. Let's do this section so we're not doing the same thing the whole time. So yeah, it's a lot of little stuff that adds up. You know, not all of these individual moves were that extreme, but really polishes out the sound when you put it all together. And then moving on here, we have our, I should also mention, it might look a little different here, but under all of these is our sends. So bus 4 is our parallel compression bus, and then bus 6 is our reverb bus, which is what I was about to talk about. So not everything is going to the reverb, and actually it's probably would have been better to have the bus go to the bus instead of these individual channels, but oh well, that's just what I decided to do for whatever reason. And then the bass is really in there. Close enough. And this is what that sounds like. It's one of those things that doesn't do a ton, but it's a neat effect that I like to use. Talked about it in the last video. But if we turn it on and off, you're not going to really notice it, but it's there. So on. The biggest thing I hear with it, and you might have caught this too, is it really brings the bass more forward, which again is part of why I cut out this frequency here. You know, I made this cut because this really helps move the bass forward, especially that high end. And it just kind of gives it a little more dimension to it. Last but not least, all of that goes into our mix bus, which is the exact same. So I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on here. But first up, we do have another instance of control hub. We got the color going, we got the dynamics, not doing a ton, try not to overcompress it because we've already got a lot going on the other channels. And then our master EQ, which isn't doing a ton, but it really just kind of brings everything together. The color and the dynamics are what really does it on this preset. Next up, we have Infected Mushroom Pusher, which is a Waves plugin, as you can tell. And this is also doing a lot of the heavy lifting. Those two plugins are what really bring the mix as a whole that extra like 10%. And this is what that sounds like, with and without. At the high end, not doing a ton. We've got the magic dialed back on this example. The body, I think that's probably about the same. But yeah, this magic button or dial is what really adds a lot of that mid forwardness especially with like the harmonic saturation, which with this one I dialed it back a little bit because these guitars are a bit more mid forward. And then the low end boost is nice. You can change this to whatever frequency you like. I found 65 works the best. And then it has a stereo image right in it. So that's pretty cool. You can add some width to your mix. And then rounding it out just like before is Newfangled Audio. This is Saturate, which is a clipper, very similar to Flatline from Submission Audio, if you're familiar with that. And it just makes stuff loud. And then last but not least is Elevates from Newfangled Audio, which is more of a suite. And it has the same clipper built in here, but it does it at the end. And so I just don't think it sounds good. I like to use the clipper going into this because then you can still have your limiter and your ceiling so you're not actually clipping the DAW. And then this transient emphasis, it's kind of hard to hear what it does, but it's there. This is just part of a preset. It says default. I don't know why my presets aren't loading correctly, but there is, where is it? There is a metal preset, which this is, or at least based off. And that's that. We have our ceiling, and that's what it all sounds like. Let's go ahead and turn all these off real quick. See, without everything slammed, you can really hear this bus reverb coming in. But if we start to turn these on one by one, you can really tell that each stage just kind of pushes it that little bit more to really bring a cohesive mix together. But yeah, that is our mix walkthrough. And that's going to do it for this section. So let's see what my final thoughts are. And that's a wrap. So let me know what you guys think. Did you prefer this track or the other version? And the thing that I'm most curious about is, do you think the price difference is worth it? Now, specifically with the ML SoundLab video, not including any of the mixing plugins like STL Tones Control Hub that I went on about, but specifically just for the instrument effects, the only one we paid for was Amped Bass, which is normally $40. I think I got it for $20 back when it came out, but we'll call it $40 for the sake of the video, obviously, because that is the normal price. And then this video, the total price retail-wise is $340. So did you hear a $300 difference? Or maybe you prefer the ML SoundLab version. I thought it was very good, and I'm quite surprised at how good it sounds for how inexpensive it was, frankly. So I think it just kind of goes to show that, does virtual gear matter? That is the question. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and of course, if you have any other video ideas of what you would like to see. But that's going to do it for this one. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.